My hot take is that generative AI is pretty much like an angle grinder. Angle grinder is like a wonderful tool for cutting metal, not so much for pruning your roses. LLMs really wonderful at generating the average sounding language, not for accuracy, not for creativity. There are some use cases where that is really good, where you actually want that average. There are some cases where it's horrible and just doesn't work.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point and find out what's on their mind. Now, if you've got something on your mind, why not head over to onenightinproduct.com/hot, where you can find a time, book a slot, we can have a chat and we can share your opinions with the world. And whilst you're there, do remember to check out onenightinproduct.com in general, where you can check out all my old episodes, find the podcast on your favourite podcast app, or subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and make sure you never miss another episode again. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get straight to Asaf Meir's hot take. So I see in front of me a kind of a dimly lit room with some kind of interesting looking book posters in the background, which have a name on which I'm sure I'm about to hear as well. So there's a man in front of me who I think wrote those books, but also, Mr. Man, if you could explain who you are, where you're based, what it is you do, and most importantly, what's your hot take?
All right. My name's Asaf. The product manager I have been for 15 years. Managing products with AI modules in them for the past 6. And for the past decade, I've also been writing fantasy books.
Interesting. And what's your hot take?
My hot take is that generative AI is pretty much like an angle grinder. And being software people, I probably have to explain what that is. Angle grinder is like a wonderful power tool that I've seen the builders use on our house. It's a tool-shaped thingy with a spinning disc at the end, which they use to cut and polish metal bits off. It's wonderful for what it does. The problem is, when why I liken Gen AI for it, two problems. One is that it's a wonderful tool for cutting metal, not so much for pruning your roses. And two, if you have a business that's building angle grinders out of parts they found at their neighbor's shed, then yes, there's a problem there.
Okay, so I like the analogy, but let's talk specifically then about what you mean by that analogy. So if we translate that analogy to an actual task that a business, like say, for example, a software business might undertake, or maybe even we product managers, what is the kind of the unsuitable use case that you're talking about, and what is the actual suitable kind of like the use case that it should be used for?
So LLMs, really wonderful at generating the average sounding language, not for accuracy, not for creativity. There are some use cases where that is really good, where you actually want that average. There are some cases where it's horrible and just doesn't work. I just came back from a trip to the US, and quite a few billboards around San Francisco had the "Don't hire people, hire our AI" on them, which is
I saw those.
Yeah, and that's not right. So when we look at what AI capabilities are right now, we went from having cogs in the machine, tools that do specific tasks, to having sort of more general purpose interns. Interns are very nice people who finished high school, read the book, very keen, but they sometimes smoke weed and hallucinate. What they're not is they're not experts. They're not anything that can actually replace human thinking. And that's, I think, where the disparity is. And that's why I say it's like an angle grinder. It's a tool. It can do the job. It can't replace the expert who's building the tool.
So yeah, that's an interesting point, because one of the things that I sometimes say to try and sound clever is this idea that the people that get the most out of LLMs and generative AI in general, they're the ones that know what to do with the outputs versus the ones that just trust the outputs sight unseen almost, and just kind of just pass them through. And you see all these stupid examples online of like people pasting prompts in that have got little hidden bits of, or pasting text in that have got like hidden prompts in, and it just answers a completely different question. And they try and do that to catch people that are trying to use LLMs to kind of game the system. And you just realize that people aren't even looking at the stuff that they're sending out off the back of these things. So do you think then that kind of dichotomy exists? You've got the people that need it the most, i.e. the ones that don't know, are the ones that are most likely to just trust the output, whatever comes out. And the people that don't need it because they kind of do know, or it just speeds them up a bit, but they're the ones that could do the work anyway.
Yeah, they could do the work anyway, but it will speed them up. Another analogy that we can think about is it's pretty much like Photoshop was 20 years ago. When Photoshop came out, everybody was concerned that now you can't trust the photos that you see on the news because it could have been photoshopped. And everybody who got a license to Photoshop thought that they are now graphic designer. So it turned out that you still need graphic designers to study theory before you can actually use the tool appropriately. Same with LLMs. You actually need to understand what you're trying to do with it before you can use it.
So what are some of the worst examples you've seen then of this going wrong effectively, like people using this for inappropriate use cases and for kind of the results not being really up to scratch? Have you seen any specifically yourself, either personally or just more public examples that you've seen around the web?
My favorite is probably the Air Canada one, where it gave, they created a chatbot on their site. The chatbot gave the wrong advice to a customer. Customer sued them. And they tried to claim in court that, no, it's a different entity. At which point court told them, no, your website, your logo, your business, your responsibility, you pay up.
But it's fair to say, though, that not everyone shares your opinion, in the sense that there are lots of people out there, kind of AI boosters, talking about how AI is going to basically replace everyone. It's going to, completely revolutionize everything. We're going to be in a situation like one of those billboards where, we're not going to need people anymore. And there are loads of tools, more and more, springing up every week that claim to be able to do X, Y, and Z and kind of, again, revolutionize everything. We've even got people or companies talking about using kind of synthetic respondents to kind of bypass the need to actually talk to your customers, because they can just do all your market research for you without actually speaking to anyone at all. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you don't believe that those tools are going to live up necessarily to their promise.
No. So when we talk about reasoning within an LLM, we're talking about essentially matrix calculation or vector calculation, right? So you can do things like Paris minus France plus Germany equals Berlin, and you can do some
good old word to vec.
Yeah, but that's the level it is. It can get better, right? And when you look at LLMs, and yes, you can shift the average of the output if you curate the state and you improve the sort of the internal calculations for reasoning, but it's still just a calculation. There's no personal exercising taste. In product land, we talk about you need to have a product taste to understand what's right, okay, for the product, what's right for your customer, for the business. There isn't this entity that can have this taste in the LLM. That will not change, right? So you can have an image generator that produces people with random fingers coming out of their nose, or you can have an LLM an image generator that produces a plausible, better images, but it will still not have a taste of understanding of what design rules are, etc. So that is sort of an upper bound from a technology perspective. And then you look at, who's actually claiming that AI will take over and replace? Probably people who are trying to live off the hype bubble to claim VC money. So they might be slightly biased there.
Yeah, I think I've seen certainly sort of two different camps. There's definitely a big group of people out there that they kind of need AI to work to make money. And that's the kind of the classic old thing. Like, if you look at someone's proclamations and you start to dig into it a little bit, like there's always some money underneath. But then at the same time, I think there are just some general kind of almost just people that want it to work because they love, they're technologists. They love technology. They want technology to work. They want AGI to happen. And they just believe that we're on an inevitable path to it. But from what you're talking about, there's like this upper bound. And that's definitely, by the way, something I've seen in like other papers and commentary as well. Like this idea that maybe this technology isn't even the technology that takes us there. Even if there is possible, that LLMs are kind of almost like a dead end. And then it reminds me of something that I read about the Apple Vision Pro when that came out, because obviously that was, again, another thing that was supposed to be a staging post to eventually kind of full mixed reality on your face. But people immediately were saying, well, yeah, but this version of technology, like, big goggles that they strap to your face, it's impressive, but it's never going to get you there, because what people really want are glasses that, are barely there at all. And that just takes you in a completely different direction. So do you think LLMs and the like are taking us in the wrong direction? Or do you think that given sufficient horsepower, they could eventually kind of catch up to the hype?
It's not about a horsepower. You will see sort of an S curve. It will plateau. Same as, When ChatGPT 4 came out, there were all those images of, this is a small dot of ChatGPT 3, this is a huge ball of GPT 4. When you compare the results, the amount of power that you put in versus the improvement that you got out, they're very much non-linear. That it's a reducing return on investment. I don't know enough to say if this will be a path or not. I know that every time somebody thought this breakthrough will be AGI, it hasn't been, right? We're still finding trouble to define what consciousness is. It's in philosophy. So I don't know whether LLMs will be a step. I'm sure that we will learn a lot from them, and same from image generator. So when we analyze what actually goes inside, it'll help the next wave come up. But I don't think by themselves they will become the next generation. By the way, you mentioned the vision. Being an author, I did write a short story, called it a face hugger, because when you have headset like I'm wearing now, which will cover half your face, and the goggles and the microphone, you strap into your desk, you put the face hugger on, and you talk to the computer. But that sort of touches also on the other problem with generative AI. Because I'm connected a lot to the creator community, there is a lot of backlash around it from people. So you have the people in the bubble, in the tech world, Silicon Valley, the pundits or the people who follow them, that believe that AI can solve everything. And then you have the rest of the world who pokes at it, says, well, this is shit. And all the creators saying, well, you kind of stole my artwork to do that without asking or doing anything. So I think that, again, this can sort of be solved in the same way that regulation around pharmaceuticals or automotive, etc., was solved. It'll take time. But right now, this Wild West is not doing anyone any favors.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's going to get any better with the regulation in the US in, a couple of months' time. But, we'll keep an eye on it, I guess. But one of the things that I spoke to actually a different guest on the podcast, Greg Prickwell. I don't know if you know Greg, but he was talking, he's very much on the booster side of the argument. And one of the questions I asked him is, look, these things don't really know what they're saying. They're kind of just, effectively probabilistically putting stuff out there, as you say, kind of almost getting to the average and putting out the next best sounding word. And his perspective was, well, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't know what it's saying next, as long as the thing that it says next is the right thing. Which is an interesting argument. And I wondered, based on your take, what your thought on this idea of if the results are good, does it matter if it's got intelligence or not?
It matters. So it matters, depends when, right? If I build a system that recommends you songs you don't like, you're a mildly inconvenienced consumer. Okay, that's annoying. If I build a system that recommends you the wrong medical treatment, or if I use ChatGPT to take a transcript of your session with your doctor, and at the end, it actually puts in medication that's the wrong medication because it misinterpreted what the doctor said, that is bad, right? The impact on you is enormous, right? It's life and death. So yeah, you can see, okay, look, it's just a transcript for a meeting. Yes, but if you use it in a doctor setting, it's wrong. So what are you using it? And most importantly, when it goes wrong, what's the impact on the user? Okay, what's the worst case scenario? And this is where you should be judging what it is, right? On the suitability of this technology.
Yeah, I was talking to another guest actually about this idea about when's the first plane crash moment, right? When's the first time that it going wrong is more than an inconvenience, and what's going to happen after that? And I don't think we've been there yet. Obviously the Air Canada thing you say, but again, still mildly an inconvenience for the company, but I'm sure there'll be something at some point. And I still think that there's going to be this, hopefully, I mean, who knows what will happen, but there'll probably be a situation at some point where someone does believe the hype and almost offloads all of their thinking, strategy and execution and all the code and everything to one of these things, and then just lets it ship. And I'd be very curious to see what happens at, at that situation, what happens to that company.
Yeah. I think the one thing you can never outsource is your thinking, right? You always have to think.
I think a lot of people are going to try. But then another interesting comment, and this is based then off of some content that I saw that was talking about effectively human-generated strategies versus LLM-generated strategies. And this idea that when they put these generated and real strategies out to a vote, that many PMs felt that the AI strategies were the best ones. Now, I could sit there and say, well, actually, that's just disproven everything that you've said. Or I could sit there and say, well, that's just a damning indictment on the quality of strategic thinking from many of the PMs that are doing the voting. Now, I'm not going to say either of those things, but I wonder what you'd say to that.
You know how they claim that ChatGPT could pass the bar exam, right?
Yes.
Okay. A lawyer does a lot more than write transcripts of case law, right? A lawyer actually exercises understanding why and which case law to pull in and what's advice to give you based on your unique circumstances, right? Same with medical exams. It's not about regurgitating the content. That's just something that's easy to test. Okay. It's not the doctor thinking through what's the appropriate situation holistically and giving it right advice. I think it's the same case here, right? With products, the strategy. They might have picked up because it was very well written. Okay, so when you look at it, it's like, yeah, okay, that looks well written. Do I understand the business? Do I understand where they're competing, how they're competing, who their competitors are? What's their unique differentiators and all that? What's the long-term strategy? Is that all encapsulated in this document? I'd say probably not. They just looked at, oh yeah, this kind of document looks nicer.
Yeah, we could add a button. That would be the strategy for the next 6 months, right? Like that's kind of almost like the quality that comes out the back of it. It's like, yeah, maybe you could get some more users or something like that. It's like, yeah, but most people could work that out. But I do think that there is, in this specific example, a bit of a gap with many PMs that don't get to do a lot of that strategic work, which means that anything that comes out that looks nicely typeset and is in the right format maybe starts to look a bit more like like a concrete thing that they could execute on versus something that I have to think about. And I guess that's a big thing out of all of this sort of PM tooling that is kind of springing up is how do we know? Like, because we talked earlier about this idea of, like it's an accelerant for the people that know how to use it. And that's genuinely how I believe that many of these people want these tools to be used. But I'm very sure that the people that are going to use it the most are the people that don't know how to do that work, because it enables them to kind of leap forward a bit. In the same way that like coders or people that can't code or can code a bit can code a lot more complicated stuff and, just hope that they don't have to look underneath and see all of the kind of security holes and bugs and stuff that are lurking around. So it's definitely a curious one. But I guess the ultimate question is like, what can we do about this? Like, you're obviously on the more skeptical side. You see these tools as tools, but definitely not the things that's going to change the universe. Definitely can't think. But that's not what everyone thinks. So what can we as PMs do, or we as people do, to kind of advocate for using these tools for what they're good for and not just using them for everything?
One is educate yourself. Like I said, you can't outsource your thinking, so you need to read up.
People are really bad at educating themselves, though. They'll just look it up on ChatGPT.
Yeah. Lots of research about what ChatGPT says about itself. Lots of very interesting papers there. But yeah, look, strategy is a way to make decisions, right? That's Stephen Bungay worldview. You can't outsource your thinking. You have to understand what it is about, and you have to watch and try to fit, problem and solution. People want to test shortcut? Sure. I mean, you can follow people who you agree with or whatever you think is their opinion correct. I would say try to follow a variety of views, so at least you can get, not just an echo chamber, but differing views. I think regulation will come up. Like I said, pharmaceuticals, early 1900s, cough syrup had cocaine and morphine in it. And I would love to get some of that now, but no, I can't because it's not good for me. There will be some regulation that comes up. It will be late because regulation isn't lagging. Like you said, there will be a plane crash moment that'll probably force it. I'm guessing it'll come out of the EU before the rest of the world, just because they've been in the past leading around this area. So we as PMs follow the market, understand what it is, educate yourself, don't buy into the hype, try to analyze, when somebody tells you something, even me, like what am I, where am I coming from? What is my background? Do I have an interest in doing anything, right? Like I said, I'm a creator, I write novels. Obviously, I'm a bit concerned about that, LLMs. On the other hand, I say, look, I've also been building applications with NLP and LLMs for a few years, so at least I'm trying to present a balanced view. Other people, if they try to sell you something unbalanced, okay, what are the other options? only once you have an understanding of that can you make a choice, can you actually try to influence legislation, companies, etc., to go down the right path.
Well, fair enough. But if people want to go down a path to come and find you after this, either to find out all about your books or chat to you about any of the stuff they've heard, where can they come and find you?
Got a really easy to find name, so Asaf on LinkedIn is, I think I'm the only one. Asaf at substack.com is my professional blog. And if you just Google me, you'll find my creative writing and everything else I've just mentioned as well. If you search ChatGPT, you will find it, but it claims I write completely different books. So,
well, you should probably write those books as well so you can catch up. Basically, ChatGPT is just ahead of the game, is what we're saying.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to link that all into the show notes. Hopefully, people come and check out your books, check out your work, and all the rest. But as for now, thanks for giving us your hot take.
Thank you.